When Donald Trump first claimed mail-in voting would be rigged earlier this year, the nation's top election security official, Krebs, reportedly told colleagues he expected to be fired. And last night, he was proven right, as the president announced he was terminating Krebs over his agency's recent statement that called the 2020 election, quote, the most secure in American history. A statement Trump deemed highly inaccurate, as he cited several disproven voter fraud conspiracy theories, including dead people voting. For his part, Krebs tweeted simply, honored to serve, we did it right. Still, the Trump campaign is battling on in court with a flurry of lawsuits challenging election results in key swing states, many of which have already been dismissed and none of which most legal experts see as likely to succeed. And that's not just because of Rudy Giuliani, who's representing the campaign in Pennsylvania, the first case he's argued in nearly 30 years, by the way, which has so far involved him forgetting which judge he was in front of, forgetting the name of his opposing attorney, and having to ask the definition of the word opacity. But apparently not content to stop at undermining the nation's democratic system, not to mention his stonewalling of Biden's transition, Trump's been spending his final days upending foreign policy, too. Yesterday, Pentagon officials announced the U.S. is pulling out all but 2,500 troops each in Afghanistan and Iraq, a declaration that comes just over a week after Defense Secretary Mark Esper was also fired via Twitter. And with 2 months left of Trump in office, many are understandably worried about what else he might do, including my next guest, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Laurence Tribe, whose students and research assistants have included the likes of President Obama, Supreme Court Justices Roberts and Kagan, Senator Ted Cruz, and Congressman Adam Schiff. Larry Tribe, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Jim.
So I've seen and read you say that these election challenges by the Trump people are totally without merit. Has anything happened in the last couple of days that changed your opinion?
No. They're without merit. Their objective is not really to win. Their objective is to cast a cloud over the whole idea of democratic elections and to make sure that 70 million people or more in this country believe that unless the autocrat that they favor is reelected, it's all illegitimate. Votes are legitimate only if they are for Trump. Votes are meaningless. Elections are meaningless. He's going to be out there. He'll never concede. And he will be exercising a kind of mesmerizing influence over a vast number of people. That's the challenge that we face. There are two universes that we occupy. They barely overlap.
Well, then I guess you've answered my next concern, which is when I heard Justice Kavanaugh, go what I would consider rogue in late October in that Wisconsin case in which he said those states want to avoid the chaos and suspicions of impropriety that can ensue if thousands of absentee ballots flow in after Election Day and potentially flip the results of an election. As Justice Kagan said, well, the problem is there are no results until those votes are counted. You're suggesting I shouldn't worry that that court will find a way to take a case and rule for Donald Trump.
Well, it might someday, not in this election. It might someday in a future election. I think the problem in this election is not that there will be 5 votes to actually install Donald Trump in the Oval Office, but that there will be tens of millions of people who, even though he is not installed in the Oval Office, will regard him as the rightful pope, basically the pope from Avignon or Mar-a-Lago, as the case may be.
Did you know Giuliani, just as an aside, before he became, a cameo in Borat, the sequel? Did you know Giuliani?
Personally, not at all. And I don't think I've missed much, but I don't know him.
Okay. So I want to ask you that. So even so, there's 63 days to go till Inauguration Day. And as we all know, he was contemplating bombing in Iran, talked out of it. He's withdrawing troops. He's done revenge firings. In this interim period between an election day and an inauguration day, the powers of a lame duck president are completely without limit, or at least no more limit than prior to election day. Is that correct?
I'm afraid that's correct. He's a lame duck à l'orange, and it's really scary because he could take all kinds of military moves. He has the nuclear codes. He's a man without principle, without a compass. The only thing that constrains him is that he doesn't want to do anything that will, in the end, undermine his own future, which means his own capacity to earn money, to become rich, perhaps to run again in 2024. But he doesn't give a hoot about the welfare of the American people. It's clear to me, and I hate to say this, that he doesn't mind if another 250,000 of us die, as long as it doesn't include him or Ivanka, and I'm not so sure about Ivanka.
Well, you know, the first part of that's not very comforting to me because even if your political calculations are right, well, actually, you may not be right. And I guess I had never thought this before the era of Trump. Should there be some limitations on a president who has lost a re-election bid in those 70-plus days between losing Election Day and the day he or she relinquishes office?
Perhaps there should. I mean, originally the lame duck period went all the way to March 20th. It's now truncated, but, you know, a smaller number of days with a larger number of nuclear options kind of averages out to every bit as much potential destruction. It's also the case that an impeached but not convicted president now has as much power as someone who has never been impeached, even though in modern days, impeachment amounts to a serious finding of guilt. So we are entering a period where our institutions, going back to the 1787 period, are just not adequate to the world we face.
And I know, having read something you wrote a couple of years ago, you're not crazy about the never-before-used Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, the so-called unable to discharge language, but obviously it's too late for that, too. I guess one potential limitation in this period, or any period for a president, because it's unresolved, I guess, is whether or not he can pardon himself. And before you tell me what your views are on that, Larry, what he clearly could do, and some have suggested he would, pardon his family members, pardon all of his cronies, resign. Pence becomes the president for a month and a half, and he clearly would have the power to pardon the prior president for all federal crimes. Am I not right about that?
You're right, but all federal crimes, of course, exclude state crimes that Letitia James or Cyrus Vance might prosecute. It also, importantly, includes future crimes. That is, I wouldn't put it past this president to sell secrets, and he's got as many of them as he can stuff in that little brain, to sell secrets to the Russians or to others for his own profit. He's leaked things before. He's leaked the identity of an Israeli secret agent to Kislyak in the Oval Office. What I'm glad he cannot do is protect himself in advance, give himself a license to commit the kinds of espionage that he might otherwise commit in the future.
How convinced are you that a president doesn't have the power to pardon him or herself?
Well, I'm convinced that as a matter of principle, he shouldn't have that power. That going back 400 years to the famous case of Dr. Bonham, in an opinion by Lord Coke of England, the idea that you can basically dispose of your own fate, that despite the conflict of interest, you can acquit yourself or pardon yourself, is incompatible with American democracy. That doesn't mean that if he were to try to pardon himself, that the current Supreme Court would hold that that pardon was ineffectual. Perhaps it is, perhaps it isn't. I think it's a matter of prediction, and I don't have any real confidence about what the current court would do, but I have absolute confidence about what the right answer is, and that is that a president, as a matter of principle, does not have the constitutional power to pardon himself, and that a genuine originalist should not think otherwise.
I want to spend the last couple of minutes on something you just mentioned, potential state crimes. Two guys I'm sure you know, Bob Bauer, former counsel to Barack Obama, now advising the Biden campaign, and Jack Goldsmith wrote a book called After Trump. They were here a couple of weeks ago. Their only debate, their only disagreement is Bauer thinks, for a variety of reasons, any potential prosecution should proceed post-January 20th. Goldsmith does not. I know there are reports that Biden favors the Goldsmith position. Two questions, Larry. One, does he face realistic possible prosecution? And two, should he face such prosecution? Who's right, Bauer or Goldsmith?
Let me say both Jack Goldsmith and Bob Bauer are friends of mine. I admire them both. I agree and disagree with both of them. I think that the question of whether the prosecution and investigation for criminal federal offenses should go forward ought not to be decided by you, by me, or by Joe Biden, or by Kamala Harris, but by a truly independent attorney general. I've written an op-ed explaining in the Washington Post why I think that, like the famous War Games scenario in which Matthew Broderick listened to the computer say, strange game, the only way is not to play. The only way to win is not to play. I agree with that. The only way for Biden to win is not to play this game. He can't make a decision himself about who should be prosecuted and when. He has to leave that, unlike what has been done by Trump with his henchman Barr, he has to leave that to a genuinely independent Justice Department. He shouldn't make that decision himself, and I shouldn't make it, and you shouldn't make it, nor should Jack, nor should Bob.
So last 30 seconds, without going into great detail, based on what you know of what you believe the New York Attorney General and the Manhattan DA are looking into, is there a colorable case against Trump or any of his family members?
I think there's a very strong case for all of them to be in bright orange suits not too long from now.
Larry, thank you. By the way, I don't know if Room Rater has judged you yet, but if they have, I'd give you a 10 out of 10. I'll tell you. If he hasn't, he should. Place looks great.
Great. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Larry Tribe. Thanks for your time.
Good to see you.